Good evening, everyone. Thank you to everyone who's here virtually and in person, but especially to those of you who are here in person. It is truly miserable outside, so I appreciate you. This is our full body meeting, the last one for the year, and we're here at DSU at the Riverfront. We are, as I mentioned, hybrid, and we're going to hear some status updates tonight from. We laid some groundwork in September about redistricting effort. In particular, we're going to hear an overview of the landscape analysis from the selected state vendors. We'll all get to hear from them, as well as some updates about the redistricting committee. But we are going to, I'm going to throw it shortly to Representative Chicocha to kind of go through some of our basics around redistricting, because we all have busy lives and there may be someone in the room or online who hasn't walked through all of this together with us before. So we're just going to make sure everyone has the details that they need to understand the project before us. So just a few important reminders for us. We do ask that you try to, and I know it's hard to remember this, announce your name before you speak in the room to identify yourself to those who are not in the room with us. If you're online, please mute yourself when you are not speaking. We are going to record this meeting because we do post our meetings online. Folks often like to have the opportunity to go back and watch it on their own time. And we want to, of course, make that easy for them. So we're going to ask for consortium members online to please type your name in the chat for roll call. That our team, I think, Lena, you're going to be tracking that. And Haley's going to be tracking that online. And you have noted who's in the room with us for attendance as well. Or do we need to do a verbal call? Is it okay just to do it by observation? Yeah. Okay. So we've got that. So if you are online, again, please type your name in the chat for a roll call. Just as a reminder, we have many wonderful educational leaders and students as well from both University of Delaware's Institute for Public Administration and DSU who serve as staff members to provide support for the Redding Consortium. So I want to acknowledge and thank them up front. So I think if we have a consortium, we are going to move to our first action item of the evening. And you should have received the minutes from our last full body meeting on September 9th. And I would look for a motion for us to approve those minutes.
Stephanie Ingram, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Great.
Second.
Wonderful. We have a motion and a second. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 You can also type aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay. I'm gonna call that approved. Thank you very, very much. And as I mentioned, we are gonna start out handing things over to Representative Chicocha to walk us through some baseline information on the redistricting work of the Redding. Okay, Representative Chicocha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. We're going to go through a quick update, some history for those who may be new to the table. Just a little brief update on our quick walk through our history and then an update on some of the things that we've been working on lately. For those know, our mission in terms of achieving educational equity and to improve the educational outcomes for the city of Wilmington. That's our grounded mission. Next slide. And the Redding Consortium, of course, was started, Senate Bill 148 and House Bill 222. And it was also updated after COVID with House Bill 229. And our redistricting mandate was to come forward a proposal for redistricting efforts in the city of Wilmington in northern Newcastle County. Some progress in the educational landscape. As you know, since 2001, there have been many reports from groups that have been focused on the educational landscape. Since then, some of the big keys that have changed, of course, increased funding, with wraparound services, effective educator support, and building leaders within our schools. Increased parent, caregiver, and family engagement within the schools have been some of the focus areas. Slide. Opportunity fundings, of course, with that, the education lawsuit, equity lawsuit, opportunity brought forth opportunity funding, improvements for the K-3 basic federal education funding, $4 million investment in teacher recruitment and retention. Also have the buzz person program statewide, and also for equity statement in terms of for necessities for capital projects. A new school configuration, the Bancroft School is now, as we know, our beautiful new Pritchett Academy. Renovated school was also Byers, Bancroft, and also the Sterling Early Learning Centers, both at Pulaski and Stubbs within the Christina School District. The Wilmington the Redding Consortium for Educational Equity has increased high education equity in terms of capacity and slots in the city of Wilmington for our early learning program, also funded wraparound and support services in our schools, as well as some educator enrichment programs. The Wilmington Learning Collaborative was created, hyper focused on supports for the 9 Wilmington schools. Boost 22 through 26 initiative, which was a cross district collaboration, which provided supports initially for students. Not sure what happened, initially for students. They just tested me. It says initially for students during COVID for that graduating year, provided supports, and that has continued. Early childhood education, strengthening again the slots, sustaining the slots for state funded ECAP programs and pre-K programs in the city of Wilmington. Mental health investments, as we know, there have been a major focus in the General Assembly, providing not only the mental health units, but also like mental health days for our students can request those. So mental health has been a big focus, recognizing the impact that that has not only in the city of Wilmington, but throughout our state. The redistricting efforts, next slide. There have been numerous efforts at redistricting over the past few years that focused on Wilmington. And the one remaining area that not being addressed has been the fractured governance, where our city is still divided and served by the 4-district model, which many have believed has not served our city well. Addressing this has been a continuing effort with many approaches to providing solutions for redistricting. Next slide. As an example of our city and the current configuration in terms of our districts or in the city, our district partners, and how our city is carved between our partner districts. Next slide. Historical context, we know statewide, there's 28 separate governing city within our city, 16 within the city of Wilmington for our 11,000 students. And there's just great inequity when it comes to the students, families, and as well as our schools and teachers and administrators that are work here, live here in the city of Wilmington. Next slide. Previous redistricting efforts, of course, in 2000, a lot of this work stems from the Neighborhood Schools Act of 2000 and the Wilmington Neighborhood Schools Committee with their plan, which sought to present combining the districts for Red Clay and Wilmington, well, Red Clay and Brandywine to serve this city, as well as having a common tax base, or a few other recommendations for that proposal. Unfortunately, none of those recommendations were implemented. That was followed in 2008 by Senator Margaret Rose Henry and her plan, which sought again to create a 2-district model for the city of Wilmington. No legislative action was taken with that. And that WEAC came in 2015, and it furthered that work and created, looking to remove the Christiana School District. And we would still have the 3 partner districts being Brandywine, Red Clay, and Colonial serving the city of Wilmington. It was in 2016. Again, that meant it will continue that same work with WIG. Of course, we know that initiative made it to the General Assembly and fell got very close to passing. And it led us to where we are now. Senator Lockman and myself of being elected in 2018 saw very quickly to pick up on the heels of WIG. And we created the Redding Consortium in 2019. We began our work with what we thought was a very aggressive timeline. And of course, we very soon later entered into a global pandemic, and our work was hampered by COVID. And we sought to continue our work moving forward. We addressed some other areas, looked into referendum reform and some other to continue our work in terms of redistricting. And we started to reconvene our efforts toward the beginning of this year. And my co-lead, County Councilman Street, and I put forth a recommendation for our body in, I believe, January of this year. Many of our members thought it was a little too ambitious and it needed more stakeholder engagement. So we reconvened in our body, put forward another interim recommendation. Next slide. So where we are now, our interim recommendation, our interim plan, which was passed by our body on May of 2024, and it sought as one of the bases for our plan is the removal of Christiana School District from the city of Wilmington. Again, many of us know it's one of the few non-contiguous districts and the only non-contiguous district in our city. And we also sought to have a partnership with 2 or fewer districts that will serve the city of Wilmington. And we have a 18-month timeline, so basically about a little under a year left. And we created subcommittees, operational impact subcommittees, fiscal impacts, and a community engagement committee. And those subcommittees would support in meeting the 13 stipulations that are required based on the legislation. Next slide. The social drivers of health and education that we will have a landscape analysis, which we'll talk a little bit about later, which will help to fuel the work of the subcommittees. And I personally just think that it's the landscape analysis that will, I believe, that truly separates Redding from many of the previous efforts. I think that having a very, not just data driven, but I think that being so current in addressing the needs of our currently in our schools as well as our communities, I think that will really help to fuel the success of not only the plan's creation, but also hopefully its support by our State Board of Education as well as in the General Assembly. Next slide. So our timeline, again, as we are, so we have basically for the next 6 months, there will be meetings for our full body, as well as there will be meetings and reports coming from our vendor for the analysis, which is the American Institute for Research. They will be working with the subcommittees as well as providing reports. And there are overall 4 reports coming from them. And we will be having subcommittee convenings throughout the next 6 months. And then going in the further months from July through November, we will continue to work. And again, a lot the premise is that the work that is being fueled, that is coming from the reports generated from the landscape analysis will be able to help to fuel the work that's being done inside of the committees that will help us to create the final plan that will be submitted. So next year, it is our hope that we will have our final plan for redistricting to be voted on in December. And that will be submitted to the State Board of Education. The State Board of Education will have 90 days to provide feedback. And then with that review will be presented to the Officers Controller General, as well as with the funding needed. And it will go to the General Assembly and hopefully to be voted on in June of next year. June of 26, sorry.
Yeah. Important clarification.
Yes.
Thank you, Representative Kocha. I find that helpful every time I hear it, being as close to it as I am. Does anyone have any questions or clarity you want to offer before we move on? I'm very excited that, as you can see in the timeline, that this month sort of represents the launch of the landscape analysis, as Representative Kocha mentioned. So we are able to introduce you to the team from American Institutes for Research, or two representatives of the extensive team who will be conducting this project with us. I was going to say for us, but I'm going to say with us. And so at this time, I'd like to hand things over to Dr. Trent Sharp and Visha Patel with AIR, who are going to give us an overview of what that analysis process is going to look like. So,
I have a clarification.
oh, okay.
Did we mean to say March of 2024?
Where was that?
That is because,
Yeah.
is it March of 2024?
No, it should be March 2025.
I'm missing what piece that was, but it sounds like it was a typo.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is on 19, on slide
Just
19.
want to make sure we caught catching.
If you're on that slide 19. Oh, in the actual photo at the time.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the typo. Correct. That should be 2025. We'll make sure that gets updated. Thank you. So we'll just look to the team to see if we are prepared to, I know they're on Zoom. So we'll take a beat and let technology catch up with us. And hopefully all will go smoothly.
Thank you, Senator Lockman. Good evening, consortium members. My name is Trent Sharp, and I'm honored to join you this evening with my colleague, Visha Patel. And we're going to be serving you all and serving as kind of primary points of context around this project for the next several months. And we're excited to hopefully make the level of contribution that Representative Chukwocha described the important redistricting effort, because we just recognize the many hours that many of you have put into this, and we're excited to contribute to that work. I do want to just confirm that you all are able to see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. We'd like to spend the next 20 minutes or so just providing a high-level orientation to the social drivers of health and education landscape analysis that we'll be covering for those of you who haven't been briefed thus far. So we'll provide a short presentation and then leave some time afterwards for any questions you all may have around that. Just to begin, I wanted to share a bit about who we are. So we are the American Institutes for Research, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the organization, we were founded in 1946, and we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan social and behavioral science organization. And what I just emphasize for you all today is that our work really seeks to understand the experiences of whole persons, and so our work centers around education, workforce, public health, economic opportunity, and we're especially excited about projects where those worlds come together, which is one of the reasons we were so excited about being able to collaborate with you all on this project. I would also say, just in terms of mission alignment, we were excited to join you all for that reason too. But for our purposes, we're really hopeful to kind of move beyond anecdote and bring evidence to the table. And we not only want to generate the evidence, but really want to emphasize use. And so Senator Logman and Representative Chukwocha both mentioned this important role of the subcommittees in the redistricting plan. We really want to stay tightly connected to that work over the next several months to ensure that the evidence is actually being put to use in a way that's meaningful to students and their families as this transition happens. As Senator Lockman mentioned, we are also representing a broader team, and I'm sorry that more of them were not able to join us this evening. But what I would just share about this team is that they're bringing some what we feel are really important lived experiences, both culturally and linguistic experience in their backgrounds, but also their professional experiences. So on our team, these will be folks you'll get to meet over the next several months. But we actually have groups of folks who work in education systems, really focusing on K-12 educational equity. Visha Patel, who's with us tonight, actually works in post-secondary and secondary to post-secondary transitions. We have groups in public health, and I'm one of the few people at the organization. I work in education systems, but I also lead a group focused on workforce innovation and learning, with an emphasis on new systems to support economic opportunity. So we're trying to bring a holistic and more systemic set of expertise to that work. And then lastly, should just mention that we've got a number of our team members who have supported prior and ongoing work in Delaware. First, the study of the Delaware funding study that was concluded a couple of years ago. And then my colleague, Dr. Liliana Carrera, is actually one of the leads on the current study in Delaware on diversifying the educator workforce. So we're excited for you all to get to meet them and excited for what they're bringing to the table, and really trust that that's going to be meaningful. And before we get in, we'd like to provide just an introduction to the needs assessment, and thought that it was important to kind of, to Representative Chikwocha's point, to kind of differentiate what we are doing from what's been done before. And as you all know, many of the prior reports have had an emphasis on educational needs assessments and focusing on assessments of schools, student outcomes, teachers, etc. So outcomes within the building. We're excited for this project because it really acknowledges that K-12 improvement and these kinds of structural innovations are certainly important, but they're insufficient to really disrupt longstanding inequitable outcomes. And so considering the multiple factors outside of school that negatively impact student and families' opportunities as they relate to health and education are an emphasis of this study. And so we just would point that out, and it will be kind of something we're navigating throughout the project, is really trying to bring those kind of insights, community insights, to bear while the subcommittees are moving through their important work on the redistricting plans. Our personal goals for our team in executing this landscape analysis is really committed to ensuring that we have customized our approach to the analysis itself. So this is not a off-the-shelf offering, but we're spending a lot of time. We'll get into some of the phases of our work, really wanting to make sure that we are mindful of and dialed into the unique context of City of Wilmington and Northern Newcastle. And already through our conversations with the subcommittee co-chairs, they've just unearthed a variety of ongoing projects and important work. I'm seeing Bettina Riveros on camera now, and just the important public health needs assessment work, et cetera. There's so much good work going on, and so we're really we're in a learning phase right now that's really committed around alignment and hopefully building and adding and contributing to an important story. So yes, number two, we really want to build on the good work. You'll see as we get into our description of our approach, another commitment is just we want to make sure that the community is meaningfully involved in the landscape analysis process, as well as in the interpretation of what we find. So we'll talk a bit about what that looks like in practice. But we're trying to be intentional about that and are excited for the collaboration with the Community Engagement Committee, who's going to have such an important role in ensuring that that's true for the redistricting process itself. And lastly, and most importantly, really at the end of the day, concluding our analysis with data and insights that the community believes in and that we feel confident in terms of rigor, and that it's ultimately very tactically useful to the redistricting teams, that we're bringing this vision of experiences, lived experiences outside of school and how that impacts opportunity, that those are coming to bear as the committees are doing their work. I will continue to move along in the presentation. I would also just urge, Visha's keeping an eye on the chat, and if there are questions that surface, feel free to ask them now, or we'll have time at the end as well. I did want to provide just a quick overview of the structure of our project and a timeline for the major components. I'm going to be going into this in a bit more detail later, but thought it would be useful for everyone to just have an orientation to Dr. Representative Chukwacha mentioned the aggressive timeline around this work, so it's hopeful to kind of situate our work within the timeline that he shared earlier. We are currently to the far left. We're in the blue polygons, where we're really in a discovery phase, and that's we began our project about 6 weeks later than anticipated, so it really started up in November, and in between now and the very beginning of March, our teams are really trying to immerse ourselves in context, all of the work that has been done, and also having conversations actually with many of you who are likely on the meeting tonight, to really get oriented to the historical context of what's been done, but also really getting clear about how we can ensure that our landscape analysis is really going to bring value to the process. And so the outputs of that process are, we will revise our analysis plan based on what we learned through those conversations. And those learnings will feed our first report, which you all will see in your larger convenings. That leads into the more intensive data collection and analysis work, which includes heavy interviews and focus groups with constituents. We'll talk about that more in a bit. Social driver data analysis. And then one thing that's not depicted here is also collaboration with local constituents to be determined through a participatory action research component of this study. And again, I'll mention a bit more about this later. And that'll run through July. And then after July, we will move into the process of a convening, which we call a community co-interpretation. I'll talk about that in a minute. And those insights from the community gathering will serve as kind of the final stage in our final report that we'll deliver to the consortium in October, before you all move towards the final report. Just a bit more detail about the activities in our current discovery phase and what we're trying to learn. We have a full team right now engaging in what we call a desk review, really looking at existing reports. So I mentioned the Christiana Care community health assessment. I have it on my screen now, and we're digging into those work. So really trying to dig into all of the redistricting reports that you all highlighted earlier from 2001 on through. There's many, and trying to understand what's been observed through those, what hasn't been, and what value we can bring. We've got a group digging into existing data sets around the social drivers of health and education to begin to really look at census level patterns around that work. Again, we're trying to avoid duplication of work that's already been done. So being able to get a sense of where we're providing new insights. Another piece of that is a part of that existing data review is to begin to understand current neighborhood level patterns that may inform how we think about outreach and engagement as we get into the study. We're going to be engaging in some initial interviews. There's actually a number of you we'd like to talk to, those of you especially who have been involved for many years. And I'm thinking of Ray Jones Avery in particular. That I know you, since 2001 you've been involved in that work, and so many of more of you can make that claim as well. So we'd like to meet with a group of folks who've really been involved in all the processes before, as well as an initial set of conversations with closer to frontline staff, community-based organizations, et cetera, to begin developing some relationships that will service, will be supportive once we start recruiting folks for the deeper work. And then based on all of those insights and collaborations with the subcommittees, we'll actually go about kind of revising how we're thinking about the rest of our work in the field. The work in our field really consists of three separate buckets of work. I mentioned the interviews and focus groups. What I would emphasize about this kind of second wave of data collection is that these are really the moments where we're really trying to get closer to the ground of lived experience of students, families, community members, and frontline staff. And so we're kind of progressively working our way closer to those groups and are excited about coordinating with folks who can help us engage in those relationships. We'll engage in a more sophisticated kind of social driver data analysis. So that'll be using quantitative data and very much a place-based analysis, looking at the social driver patterns and how they vary across communities as a backdrop to some of the redistricting work. And for the participatory action research team, one of the core values of that work is that is not a set of questions that AIR gets to determine, but rather we're going to need to coordinate with those who are participating in the work to examine what we are learning, and from our prior experience, they will bring insights and ask questions that we would have never imagined. So we're actually very excited about that collaboration. And that's currently a group of 15 people who will be compensated for engaging in that work. And we'll talk a bit more about next steps with that in a moment. And then lastly, in terms of process, we noted the multiple, what we've called phased reports. So those, as we are learning throughout the process, our goal is to be kind of feeding that and coordinating with the subcommittees around the subcommittee convenings. There's a co-interpretation event, which I'll describe here in a moment, where we're really asking kind of what insights stood out and beginning to prioritize and add additional details to what we found, and that all of that will ultimately flow into a final report. Just quickly to mention what the co-interpretation typically has looked like in other places. I think what I would tell you about that is most certainly an event that we will be co-designing with the Community Engagement Committee. But in the past, what it's typically looked like is we've had large venues with 80 to 150 is about as large as I have facilitated, where you have the space and the time for diverse constituents to get together and sit and make sense of the findings. So that's put some onus on us to deliver reports that are in plain language and accessible, really thinking through the accessibility of what we're finding. And so there's some shared sense making, as well as some kind of shared prioritizing and highlighting key findings, as well as contributing additional things. And so there's a section where we ask, what else do folks know about the key themes? So those are energetic full day events, and we'll be coordinating those with the subcommittees. Just wanted to mention a few details about our coordination and how we'll be coordinating with various other bodies. Some of this has been mentioned already, but within the consortium, many of you on the call are serving on some of the subcommittees, with which I believe Senator Lockman is going to be speaking about in more detail here in a moment. We have a set of working teams, so there's actually a number of people on this call tonight who I'll share with you here in a moment, who we're coordinating around logistics, planning, the early stages of the work. And then you see the Participatory Action Research Team. Once it is established, they will be key partners in coordinating with the Community Engagement Subcommittee as well as us on the study as that work progresses there. So we thought it'd be useful just to kind of get a sense of our current understanding of that work, and obviously the branches of that tree grow the more we learn and the more we're in the field. Just a quick note on the Participatory Action Research Team. It's one of the key conversations we are excited to have as we move through the discovery phase, is really working and co-designing with the Community Engagement Subcommittee to get a handle on co-designing an approach to recruitment and outreach, and identifying candidates who may be really interested and excited to participate in that work, and how we can structure that work. So that's we'll be excited to bring more detail to you the next time we get to meet with the full body. But just know that that is in process. And at a high level, what we're clear about is that the membership on that team really must be those who with lived experience, and those who would stand to benefit from the work, and who can really speak to it. So we do have some clarity there. We also want to be mindful of any opportunities to build on existing work that's already happening. So I'm, for example, a former high school teacher and high school principal. So one of the things I wonder about is if there's already some community narrative projects in play, or if there's specific knowledge and skills that juniors and seniors might be trying to develop, that applied research and writing might be beneficial, or sharing stories through other mediums. So that's just an example of the kind of brainstorm we're excited to have around that team. But really excited about what they're going to bring to the table. I should also mention they are not just engaged in the research, that they're part of their findings and their contributions would be featured in a focal point of the co-interpretation. So I should mention that as well. Sticking with coordination, I just mentioned some of the internal teams that we're coordinating with. We have a small team here to the left, this group 1, who we will not read off everyone's name, but just wanted to give you a sense. There is a small group who we're meeting with much more regularly, who are helping shepherd this work and advise this work and support scheduling and coordination on a higher frequency. We've got a subtly larger group that also will include the subcommittee co-chairs as needed, where we're really providing progress updates and really vetting early findings and ideas, and as plans are emerging or as new insights are emerging and we see opportunities to over deliver or expand on landscape analysis in an important way. We would have a sounding board here that's really going to help navigate that work. And then with you all, we would expect regular bi-monthly progress updates at your full body meetings, as well as with the subcommittees, and we'll coordinate with them on those pieces. And then lastly, and I know Senator Lockman, I believe you're going to be covering some of the details on the subcommittees, but Representative Chukwocha referenced the 13 stipulations for the redistricting plan. I just wanted to show a visual of some initial thinking we have done in conversations with the subcommittees, and these are very, very early stage. But while the things we are learning in the landscape analysis are solidly out of school, systemic, really focused on experiences of students and families, there are some we're seeing very specific places where we would be speaking directly to many of the stipulations that would be in this work. What's not captured here are things like the conversation with the fiscal impact committee, who noted that one of the things we may find is that there's really important community assets that are being underutilized and actually could be more centered in some of the work and brought in as integrated as more of a central and resource to this work. So, which is to say, every conversation we've had so far with the subcommittee membership and members of the consortium has unfolded kind of deeper understanding. So I really expect a really rich collaboration with the subcommittees, and that will become more defined over time. And with that, I'll pause and like to just leave whatever time is available to field any questions if you all have them.
Opening it up to see if anyone has any questions for Trent or Michelle, we have them. And then there's probably a lot to take in, so, and we'll have lots more opportunities to raise questions, engage, and oh, you have someone online?
I see
And would-
Bettina raise her hand.
Oh, wonderful.
Hi, I just wanted to thank Trent. You went through a lot of those materials with us in our first meeting, and it was good to go even deeper today. So thanks so much, and really appreciate you looking at existing sources of data and information about the community, like the needs assessments and other things that uncover the same issues that many of those issues that you identified, and taking advantage of the questions we've already asked the community. And then doing even more. So really appreciate your work. So thank you.
Bettina, thank you so much for how responsive you and your team have been. It was a real luxury. So thank you.
Comments from anyone who's been involved in the process so far? I know you've got to see some of the team members who have been engaged and we've had a lot of meetings, and it's exciting to feel like we're now turning to the work. Okay, well, thank you. Go ahead. Where's your Rachel Avery speaking?
Good evening, everyone. I was just pointing out that this is a part of the information that's before you, but it's very dense. This is a really good the document. This says revised Redding Consortium landscape analysis produced by AI.
Yeah, that's the full project document on which our contract is based. So everyone who is here in the room has a copy of that in your stack of documents. And I believe, Adelina, that everyone would have received that by email in attachments for tonight as well. So you have that in your email. Okay, great. Well, if there's no questions, I just want to thank the AIR team for that overview, and we really are very excited about the partnership with the consortium. And as we promised, I am going to talk a little bit more about the subcommittees. We talked on a high level about them in September, and I'm just going to reiterate a couple of things and also let folks get a glimpse of who the membership are. So I have my everything for me. So we do have 3 subcommittees, as Representative Chakotcha pointed out. And we've talked quite a bit about those 13 stipulations. So those are the components of what is required in state code in a full and final redistricting proposal. And as you've seen, those 3 subcommittees are operational impacts, fiscal impacts and community engagement. And the research and planning work of these subcommittees are what will ultimately help guide the creation of that final redistricting plan. So as you can see here, selection was based on Redding Consortium members' expressed interests and other factors. And there you will also see appointees who are not members of the full body of the Redding Consortium, and they have been placed on the recommended subcommittees as designees by our district superintendents, by DSEA, and our charter school leads on the Redding Consortium. They were all given an opportunity to appoint across the subcommittees. Okay, so we'll get started just looking at what the operational impact subcommittee is all about. Oh, there it is. So what you can see on this slide here are the 4 stipulations that we have assigned to this operational impact subcommittee. I'm not going to read them word for word. You can see them in a number of different places. But this has to do with coming up with the details of how to make sure that a reassignment of students is orderly and minimally disruptive. We have this requirement of students being able to complete the grade levels offered at that school for continuity. Obviously, the huge question of transportation and also what the timetable that would be most appropriate and effective might be. So that will be the charge of this group. Next slide. Next slide, please. And so that group will be co-chaired by Deirdre Joyner, the Deputy Superintendent and CAO, and currently are the principal at Pritchard Academy with Christina School District, and Bettina Torrey-Riveros, who is with Christiana Care as their Chief Health Equity Officer. And I'm not going to read the names of all the subcommittee members, though, so you can check them out there. And then we next have our Fiscal Impact Subcommittee, and they have 3 stipulations out of the 13, and that of course is fully focused on the resources that would be required to operationalize this proposal that's being put forward, that will be put forward, in this distribution of capital assets, and also making sure that this is effectively implemented in a manner that will improve educational outcomes. So that those broad, obviously the stipulations are rather broad, and we'll be looking to get into the weeds and details of all of that in the coming year of drafting our final plan. And the members of the Fiscal Impact Subcommittee, so that will be co-chaired by Erin Bass, CEO of Eastside Charter School, and Emily Falcon, the COO and CFO of Colonial School District, who is with us. And the subcommittee members there. And then finally, we have our Community Engagement Subcommittee, which has a long list of stipulations that are its charge. So that's looking and working with these different groups to understand what the implications of advancing a plan would be, and make sure that those stakeholder groups are fully engaged throughout the process. Of course, we have that assessment of educational needs, which is the landscape analysis, and we've sort of wrapped that into the landscape analysis that you just heard about, as well as taking a look at recommendations we can make around secondary education, including potentially the need for specific new school opportunities on that level. And of course, as always, through the Redding Consortium, looking at what we can do to monitor and evaluate the impacts and outcomes throughout, and report on that to those who need that information moving forward. And then on the next slide, what you'll see are some of the things that we actually wrapped into the interim plan. So these are not stipulations from code, but what we agreed as a body that this subcommittee needed to be focused upon. And so of course, we talk about focus groups, making sure that we are checking in with groups that are doing parallel and compatible work, such as Bloomington Learning Collaborative, but we know we also have a number of other entities on the state level and otherwise that are also looking at reforms that we need to make sure that we are engaging with, looking at some of these very specific recommendations, and of course, having an educator advisory panel is one of those top priorities that we agreed to in our interim plan. And so the membership to support this will be led by Stephanie Ingram, president of DSCA. Thank you, Stephanie, and Maria Cabrera, who is a council member at large Bloomington City Council. And there you can see the membership of that subcommittee. You'll notice also, just to reiterate, that in addition to consortium members assigned and the appointees from the LEA leaders and DSCA, we also have liaisons to Wilmington Learning Collaborative on each of those entities. So I believe that's Dr. Burgos in 2 cases and Helen Anderson in the case of this particular subcommittee, to draw attention to that. And then finally, just who else is involved, but you haven't seen our names elsewhere so far. We of course have our project chair, Namdi Chukocha, leading the redistricting project. And then as co-chairs of the full body, Matt, Dan, and I, we have nicknamed ourselves Big Ideas project chairs, and we will also be working with the subcommittees on talking about some of the items that need to be considered beyond simply the moving of lines. So that's what that indicates. And then of course, we're working with the Department of Education in terms of technical support. And so this is, broadly speaking, our team. So in terms of so what we ask for our subcommittees to do is to be focused on the impact of planning around the reassignment of students from the city of Bloomington that are currently in the school district, Christina School District. This is the initial priority for consideration because we know based on the interim plan that this is what we have agreed upon as what will happen next. And believe that in focusing on that impact, it'll help us to best determine the optimal way to reach the 2 or fewer districts to serve the city of Wilmington, as was stated in the interim plan. And so that's the framework that's going to guide the subcommittee's planning and research. And of course, as it's been mentioned multiple times, the community engagement will be a core part of this work, and the broader policy reform plan will occur alongside that. Any questions on membership, goals, and processes? That's a good. Okay, we're gonna take that as a good sign and move along to the next thing. So I'm actually gonna hand the mic to Superintendent Green to talk about this action item that I have discussed with you all. You want to make a little amendment to our spending plan?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Senator Lockman. Wanted to bring something to the full body with regards to the initiative formerly known as Boost 22 that transitioned into Boost 26. Representative Chukocha indicated, when Redding Consortium was created in 2019 and the pandemic hit in 2020, as district serving the city of Wilmington, greater northern Newcastle County, along with my superintendent colleagues, one of the things that we noticed were just trends that students and families, in particular the graduating class of 2021 had experienced. And so we put our collective heads together and created an initiative called Boost 22. And Boost 22 was an effort that really looked to enhance the existing district programs to help more students remain in school and on track to graduate through 2022. We did data analysis. We looked at trends across our districts. And one of the things that we did as districts really looked at a collective impact framework to say, regardless of where a student may be attending school, it was more based on geo-mapping the city, regardless of zip code. If a student was at William Penn, but lived in Red Clay, we kind of removed those systemic barriers to ensure that we provided the necessary resources for that student to complete graduation. And we partnered with Communities in Schools Delaware, CIS, to really look at a position called graduation coaches, which really look to personalize supports for students through cohorts. And Redding graciously funded that effort. And now that we're in Boost 26, that work needs to continue. And oftentimes when we provide or receive funding and we see success, that funding tends to go away. And so we don't want to create an initiative And I want to thank Ray and in particular Jeff Minzer, who co-chaired the social determinants work group through Redding, who kind of spearheaded that effort. And then we got it so far as to really looking at shared data across our districts, really removing those barriers so that we could collectively provide supports to the communities throughout the city of Wilmington, regardless of what school they were attending, whether that would be feeder or what school they were a choice in, whether that was Newcastle County Votech, Brandywine. We kind of just looked at it as to how do we best support students. And so we have Dr. Carlton Lampkin here from CIS Delaware as representative, and also Mr. Brian Barnhill, who is the graduation coach for Red Clay. If anyone had any kind of insights or questions, but the request is to amend the spending plan so that we can continue to fund this effort to ensure that we're not putting supports and services in place for students through the graduation coach support and now removing that. We want to see this project through. I think it's a case example when we talk about redistricting efforts where if we remove the barriers, whether those are geographic barriers or demographic barriers, the students in essence will receive that support. So the funding request for Boost 26 is $320,000 for the final year for community and schools graduation coaches. And this request is to support the 4 graduation coaches for the 2025-2026 school year. So that's what's before the consortium. Happy to answer any questions. And again, we have Dr. Carlton Lampkins here and Mr. Brian Barnhill if you have specific questions in terms of the program. Yes.
How did you measure success?
So we measure success, one, through ultimately graduation, but course grades, attendance, a lot of the social drivers. I think one of the things that we realized is a lot of our students post-pandemic were working. So what were those barriers in terms of them not attending school or flexibility and credits, acquiring credits to graduate? But the ultimate measure was completion of high school and graduation.
So you saw an increase in numbers?
So we saw an increase in numbers. We also saw trends through zip codes where we initially may have assumed certain aspects of it through perception data, but when we really drill down and look at data in terms of completion of Algebra 1, almost down to course course earnings, and we had those conversations across districts because we know we're on different schedules. We all have different graduation requirements to a degree, and so what are some of those inherent barriers that we didn't know had we not gone through this process to maybe even understand that, again, as systems, we're propping up a lot of barriers to prevent students from completing. So our graduation coaches also work across districts and they routinely have those discussions. And so a lot of work has gone into it. So we want to see the completion of this work through. So.
Just 2 questions. How many students are we talking that are going through the program?
Dr. Lampkin?
And then could we also have our communities and schools representatives kind of talk a little bit about, this is the first time they've been here, right? For me anyway, some of the supports you provide, what are some of the things that you help the students with? That you're here.
Dr. Carlton Lampkins is here to grace you.
Our cohort is 532 students, which is, they all are Wilmington residents. We have 19 schools and programs that we provide assistance to. We have 4 community graduation coaches who provide that assistance. Most of them are in, they have a school district and one of the vocational schools that they provide support to. That support includes meeting with them, meeting with their parents. Of course, we must get their permission, parents' permission, in order to work with those students. So that means that we get that permission many ways. Phone, take a picture, go to their homes, however we can get permission is what we do. And all of those students' parents have given us permission. I think what I'd like to do is, if you don't mind, just a couple minutes, I'd like Mr. Barnhill, because he's boots on the ground, to just give you a brief overview of what they do as community graduation coaches.
Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
All right, my name is Brian Barnhill. I'm a community graduate coach for the Boost 22-26 program. I work at the community school. I work in the Red Clay School District under Dr. Green. And I work with McKean, Dickinson, AI, CAB, and Conrad. As community graduate coach, I meet with students multiple times a week. In small group settings or individual settings. I sit down with my students and come up with individual support plans, also meet with the counselors to make sure that we're on the same page as far as what we're doing with the kids. Some of the kids may have IEP plans, so we need to make sure that, you know, what additional help they're already getting, that we're all on the same page and just bringing more assistance to that student. Also, we work with those kids throughout the year. I've been working in this position on the Boost program for 4 years now. I'm standing before you to let you know that our program is not only needed, but it works. I've seen the students come in high school with defensive behavior, closed off, lack of interest, and not open to any form of help. They're focused on their social life and finding their place in high school as they come into high school. And their grades usually fall by the wayside. Not only is the social life important, but they also are dealing with so much at home that their grades and performance in school are the least of their worries. They come with a rebellious attitude like, who are you? What are you trying to talk to me for? So this was the exact story and mindset of most of the students when I first met with them. It took a little while, but after meeting with students multiple times and letting them know that I'm here to help establish a rapport, staying consistent and being honest with them. The connection was the real key to them opening up and having trust. And gradually over time, my students started doing better in school, attendance, behavior, academics, and their mindset improved overall. I have a student who is currently a junior. When I met with her, she really did not care much for me or the program. Totally turned off. She really struggled with her attitude towards school, and her grades suffered because of she struggled with a lack of confidence. It took 3 marking periods and a few conversations with mom to really get through to her. I found out that student was having their own issues at home with mom, and it played a big part in her behavior. Just letting her know the reality of her academic situation, if she committed on her path, also providing some guidance on how to navigate what she was going through personally. She opened up to me and really opened up to the help of our program, the help that our program offers. Now I meet with her a few times a month, and she is a whole new person. Over the years, she has blossomed tremendously. Her academics has completely turned around. She is really confident and she's made honor roll. I want to take just a few more moments to let you know on her own words, how this program has impacted her. I've gotten several letters from several students from all 5 of my schools. This is based on how the program is helping them, what they feel the program gives them. And for this particular young lady, when I began community in school through Mr. Barnhill, I was 14 years old. I struggled with my school and my grades because I was hanging around the wrong people, missing classes. I didn't put any effort into doing my work. During that time, I was very childish, but once I started meeting with Mr. Barnhill, he helped guide me throughout the school. He made sure I was doing well in my classes and helped me with anything I needed. I needed help with the ways to fix my poor grades and how to ask teachers ways to pass their classes. He also helped me maintain a good and stable positive towards school and my grades and my future, which I am now looking forward to. Having our meetings have helped me become more motivated in my classes. It gave me a boost of confidence in my intelligence, which makes me so grateful that I can be included in communities in school. I'm grateful for Mr. Barnhill and his motivation Mr. Barnhill gave to me. It pushed me to expand my horizon, giving new, different things to try. I am participating in a nursing program, studying anatomy, the physiology, CNA, and phlebotomy. I'm thinking about schooling abroad from college in South Korea because it will be challenging for me since South Korea is a foreign country. But with this motivation and confidence, I've grown with the help of Mr. Barnhill. I won't give up on my chasing my dreams. Instead, I'll put my all into studying, learning the culture and language of the law and so much more I need to know to be able to study in South Korea. I thank Mr. Barnhill and Community School wholeheartedly for helping me become a better version of myself. Without those connections, I wouldn't be here and be where I am today. So I have.
So. And also, I think it's one thing worth noting, and one of the things that we learned through the initial Boost 22 initiative, that starting in high school by junior and senior year is too late. So the notion why we went to 26 was to that early start and getting them acclimated, not only to the transition within school, but also understanding that really it's your freshman year is your most important year, not your junior year.
And I can say that this big change, and we had talked about the Dr. Landers, and we met after the 22, working as seniors, we were catching on the tail ends. A lot of students, when they turn 17 or 18, they don't want to consent because they're 18 and they just want to just be out in regards to what their situations were. But a lot of seniors did pick up on it and we did very well, surprisingly, for a lot of kids that were disengaged from the pandemic, that were basically on the borderline of failing. And then once the pandemic hit for basically 2 years, a lot of those kids fell by the wayside. You know, it was hard to get them engaged, but why us being able to do home visit, talk to parents, let them know what we do, and having an extra pair of eyes on them, holding them accountable for their attendance, behavior, academics, making sure they get their homework done, doing their assignments, putting academics before athletics, you can't have the one without the other. So it really helped and it really showed the big difference in what we do. So.
Thank you so much.
And just to give you some data, if you will, at the end of the 23-24 school year, we had 89% of that 532 students who were on grade level promoted. We had 61 students that of course, we got to go back. We still have to go back every marking period. While we have some kids who we target, we have other kids who are not targeted. But those who are not targeted this semester may be targeted next semester because they may fall by the wayside and get a couple failing grades or whatever. So we have to go back every marking period and double check their grades and their attendance, especially for those who are not targeted, to be sure they're keeping up, because kids, they can fall by the wayside very quickly.
And how that works is, after this first marking period ended, I had about 5 or 6 kids that did well their freshman and sophomore year. No problems, academics or behavior. But then once I went through the non-targeted, I saw 6 kids, in grades, they failed. First marking period, so I'm wondering, okay, that's the red flag to say, hey, what's going on? So now I need to try to keep with those 6 kids to possibly let them know what I do, give them permission slips, take to their parents. To get permission to meet with their students and see if they want them involved in the program. Because a lot of times students do well their freshman year, they do well their sophomore, they do well their junior, but their senior, they kind of get in their mode and they start thinking, okay, I'm good, but what happens is a lack of focus, and then here we are, going through a struggle.
4 coaches, 500 kids, 125 per coach.
Pardon me?
You say you have 500 kids,
500.
4 coaches, 125 kids per coach.
125 kids.
Roughly.
And again, I think it's also
89.
89%. Well, I wouldn't think I
It's also targeted, some case management, and the 500 are the total number of students. So not every student from Mr. Barr is targeted. So they were, I think the biggest thing is really working to bridge that divide between school and community. And I know in a lot of our schools, whether that be through choice, that lived experience is very different than that school experience. And lack of advocacy a lot of times is where students are dropping off the page, because there's no one between that counselor looking at schedules. I have to give Mr. B credit, because he's working with our 5 schools, and I see him just as much as I'm out and about, he's out and about, and he's really hustling to do a lot of that work and working with various school counselors to make sure that the students who are on the quote unquote targeted, which is really tiering that through a multi-tier system of support, when we talk about MTSS. What are those interventions that all 500 are benefiting from? But then more importantly, when you talk about that tier 3, that student who might be working, who may need just additional online credit support because they have to work, because they're providing a means. So how do we work through that process? So it started out as a pilot. We've learned a lot through this process. And again, the request is just for us to be able to see that work through with Boost 23.
It's
So
the
thank you.
personalization, I think that makes such a difference.
And this is direct services to students.
Yes.
I think one of the things that we typically fund, we fund programs, but this is a clear indication where we're funding direct services to students.
So, corresponding persons are providing for this program, for the students that are in this program,
We say correspondence course.
online.
If that's an option, but it's individual plans, so they will really, it's targeted to that individual student. So they do have that option with various credit recovery, different opportunities and things, they work holistically to make sure that's provided.
I was referred to this program.
So they work with our school counselors, they monitor
question? Sorry.
how the students refer to the program. So first is just targeted at really looking at who the students that live with it. This is a Wilmington specific initiative. So we have the students who are within the city of Wilmington limits, but then they monitor the
That is
data.
the only criteria.
Right, that you live within the city.
Resident
So
of
they-
Wilmington.
So it's again, through MTSS, looking at data. They can refer them, but it's also looking at who's the tier, who needs that support the most, that we really look at how this thing.
Now, I will say to you, one of the downsides is that this is Boost 26. Unfortunately, we got those kids who were Boost 27 and Boost 28.
We're not there yet. That's why
Exactly the time.
we're building it.
But those are kids who
We're building.
still struggling.
That's the CIS.
Thank you, but we're gonna get this motion on the table first. Thank you so much for being here and even more for the work that you do on the ground every
And
day,
thank you for the social determinants of health,
right?
social determinants work group that actually.
The operational- Yes, no, we have a lot of things to spread around. So, I just want to put a little context. Oh,
I was just gonna ask,
Yes.
ask for a clarification before you move the motion.
I
And
think that makes
thank
you
you, thank you for your service. Obviously, I'm a big champion, not only because of the intensive support, but we don't have robust services for older kids, for older young people, and the across-district collaboration model is really important. We really need to pay attention to that. So my clarifying question is, it says, the motion says for the final year, is the final referring to the cohort?
Seniors.
the fourth
No.
year.
For the final year of community and school graduation coaches. I don't want people to interpret that as that it is the final of the initiative.
No, it's not the final, the initial, it's basically to see the current cohort.
Yeah.
Right, that
Yeah,
cohort
yeah,
that came in 2022.
correct.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, it's not a final forever. It's a final for
Yeah.
this cohort to complete the
For
4-year
this cohort.
time
Yep.
span.
Thank you very much.
Great question. And then I just want to add a little context that maybe nobody asked for, but just so any folks listening don't think we can just pull $320,000 out of nowhere and come asking for more. Where does this money come from? So in September, we voted to approve our fiscal year 25 spending plan. So what that says, that was when we agreed on how we're gonna spend both our 10.3 million that we received from the state in recurring funds. And then we have a little over 4 million left over in one-time funds to work with. And so you may recall in September, one of the things we did with that sort of $4 million pot was set aside of just a little shy of $1.6 million to support redistricting planning. And that was prior to having completed the contract with our vendor And so what we are proposing to do tonight is to move $320,000 out of that pot to boost. It will leave over $850,000 still in that pot for us to utilize for support for redistricting planning, so not to worry about that. But luckily we gave ourselves a nice buffer and we knew what the remainder was. So that's where the money is coming from. So I would entertain a motion on approving the boost funding request and or modifying our fiscal year 25 spending plan to support the boost funding request.
So moved.
Second.
Everyone wanted to move that
This
way.
is Tika, I second.
You can go with a motion from Superintendent Green, and I believe that was Bettina who seconded.
Tika's
Correct.
Tika second. All right, perfect. We got a motion.
Whatever
we
you
got a second. Thank you. Love it, love it. So we're gonna go ahead and have Haley, I believe, conduct a full roll call of everyone at this time.
Yep. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Aaron Bass. I believe he's absent. Ayana Khan. Bettina Riveros.
Yes.
Maria Cabrera.
Yes.
Danielle Woods.
Yeah.
Darrell Green.
Yes.
Eric Buxton. Emily Falcon for Jeff Menzer.
Yes.
Jennifer Tompkins.
Yes.
Joe Jones.
Yes.
Kendra Brown.
Yes.
Lisa Lawson.
Yes.
Margie Lopez Waite.
Yes.
Maria Matos.
Oh, yes.
Matt Den.
Yes.
Mike Perzicki. Namdi Chukwocha.
Yes.
Ray Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Ray Jones Avery.
Yes.
Robert Andrzejewski. Stephanie Ingram.
Yes.
Teron Williams.
Yes.
Tika Hartsock.
Yes.
Tizzy Lockman.
Yes, and I believe Senator Buxton may be back online. Maybe.
Oh, great.
Maybe.
I'm looking, I don't see him yet, but it passes either way, but we do appreciate the support.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Do you want to add that clarity around? So that just as a point of clarity with our spending plans, we send what we have approved to OMB and the Comptroller General for final actual, approval. But this will allow us to let them know what our update is, and they will do that. I'm not too worried about that. So at this time, we are going to move to a new item on our agenda that will allow an all full body meeting consortium member updates. And I think we just have one announcement. That I'm going to give you my membership proxy to make the announcement to everyone. Karen, make sure you introduce yourself to everyone.
This. You said in such a perfect spot for this. Oh, speak up a little.
No, introduce yourself too.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Eller. Thank you for giving me a moment to speak, Tizzy. I wanted to take a minute to celebrate one of your newest consortium members, Ron Williams. He is a recent graduate, and I mean recent, this past Monday, in the University of Delaware's Principal Preparation Program. So cohort 9 members before graduation on Monday had to present their action research projects that they've been working on for the last year and a half. And you presented such a phenomenal presentation on implementing restorative practices to foster a sense of belonging, which also included student voice in his presentation. He had a full house in the room with many people standing in the back. So I just wanted to take a minute to celebrate some of the great stuff happening by educators in schools, and congrats on your recent graduation.
Oh, and you're a recent graduate of that program as well, correct? Oh, you're in it. Oh, behind.
Yeah.
Would you like to say anything, Mr. Williams?
Thank you. But also, like I said to Karen, I've been fortunate to be a recipient of the Lewis Redding Scholarship. And so I appreciate and thank this body for putting that in place so that educators like me who Ray Clay have the ability to extend their learning and be free. So thank you all.
That's fantastic. It's great to hear about a lot of great work. And
questions, do you have any?
Yes, I'm.
uh-oh, no coaching at this table. Take it outside. Stuck on my eye. Oh,
Okay.
any other announcements or contract of members?
Just a shameless plug too, because to my right, Dr. Woods actually will be graduating from the cohort from the Governor's Institute of School Leadership tomorrow. Yes.
A lot of good pictures and stuff. Secretary Geisenberger. did I-
So I don't know if the governor's representative, John Sheehan or Mark Holiday are on the line, but I wanted to just express our thanks on behalf of the administration for allowing us to sit in on these meetings and hear what's going on and keep us informed so that, you know, we've been able to be supportive of the kinds of things you all are working on. And I'm sure that the governor's looking forward to becoming a member of the consortium as the mayor, as he becomes mayor. You know, it's the main reason he ran for mayor was because these are the issues he cares about. So I'm sure he's going to be excited to be part of this group. So thank you for letting us participate.
Thank you for just being full participants as you have been. That support has meant a lot.
And we'll obviously convey to our successors the
Yeah.
importance of continuing to be involved. So.
We hope he is.
Oh.
See where he is.
This
I said
is
we
just about hope we make things happen.
Hope that he will continue to support us. The new governor incoming.
I'm looking forward to his support. I'll put it that way. We look forward to his support.
Well, for those of us who are ex officio, we'll certainly try to emphasize that as we're transitioning.
Thank
So,
you.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, happy transition and holidays to all, but we're not closing yet. We do still have to see if we have any public comment available. And then we will be done. I'm looking at the clock. We didn't do too badly. Do we have anyone in the room or online who would like to offer a public comment? Going on? No?
I don't see anyone.
We don't see anyone. So with that, we are gonna close out this meeting. Happy holidays, everyone. See you in the new year, probably before that though.